As is what the PIG has put forth in terms of their recommendation, which is to maintain policy 103.8 prophylactics in the public schools.
You're looking for a motion on that?
Yes, I'm looking for a motion on
Glad
that.
to get it in discussion.
Okay, second. Okay, we're in discussion on prophylactics in the public schools.
Okay,
Yes, Ms. Asselby.
thank you. So, I think what I could do is actually move to amend the motion to consider and refer now then to the motion for adoption with recommendations. And so that is what was distributed to board members, which is in front of you. So what is in front of you, as you can read, is to recommend adoption of board policy 103.8, the prophylactics in public schools, and instruct the department to include discussion of possible amendments to board policy 103.8 when obtaining feedback regarding the implementation plan for new board policy 103.4, school health services. Taking into specific consideration, number 1, the public testimony submitted on board policy 103.8, 2, the needs of students and school level staff and faculty, and 3, increasing the provision of healthcare services to students. Also to instruct the department to report back to the board regarding any proposed amendments to the prophylactics policy when board policy 103.4 implementation is next on the board agenda. So this motion for adoption of the policy includes specific recommendations for implementation or for, not implementation, for further consideration of the policy. And so what I think has happened is that this is one of those policies that if it came out of nowhere, that it would be deleted. And I think it, struck both the department staff as well as school administrators. What would we do if that happened? And for lack of focus or attention to this over the last year, not much discussion or feedback has occurred on this policy. And I think what we need is consensus and understanding are, like Member Horner raised earlier, on what is the data that we need to look at to understand the need for prophylactics in our public schools. I think we had 2 witnesses who gave us some information, but there's more that's out there. In small areas, we could have some idea of what's happening in some public schools that keep this data, because we like to make decisions in our schools based on data and what's actually happening. But also maybe looking at options for this policy in terms of this larger policy we put forward on school health services. And does this fit in, or does this not really have a part in the department looking at that issue and how this might be something that's needed or not needed by students? To what degree do we feel, and with everything from the student to the administrator to the parent and community voice, how should we look at this policy going forward? So that's what I'm trying to get at with these instructions, and I'm wide open to any language changes. But if you have any questions on if I wasn't clear about what we're trying to get at with this, I'm happy to talk more, and Patricia and I worked on this together. Thank you.
Thank you. So what Amy's proposing is a motion to substitute the motion that Mr. Horner, or extend the motion that Mr. Horner put forth, substitute it, to adopt the policy, but with these additional recommendations. So that's on the floor. Okay, so it's seconded. We're in discussion.
I'm confused.
Okay. So you made a motion to recommend adoption of 103.8.
No, I made a motion to accept the recommendation of the PIG.
Okay, which is to which is the same thing. So, which is the same thing. So 103.8 was the recommendation of the PIG to adopt it. Okay, so similar. So now Board Member Asabai is substituting your motion with her motion to recommend the adoption of 103.8 along with the description in this.
This becomes part of a policy? All this complicated stuff?
It's not a policy, it's more of, it's a motion to discuss this and have the department, when they're doing implementation, to look at this. So we're in discussion right now. So she's recommending that if we are to adopt this policy, the idea for the department to consider the testimony and all the feedback in the field in looking at how to revisit this particular policy on whether or not it needs to change or adjust according to data and what the field is saying in regards to this particular policy. Yes, Board Member Williams.
Chair, at this point, I think, we probably have consensus that this policy needs to be addressed further. This subject needs to be addressed further. The question is, I guess, really is whether that should be done in a context of 103.4 implementation plan. And I mean, it sounds okay to me. I don't know if DOE wants to comment on that. If they don't object, then I would support this motion.
We don't have any objection to it.
Mr. Horner.
I would be supportive of it if, in that consideration, which is missing here, is the notion of implementation cost. Who gets it, when you get it. I mean, there's a problem. I think, to me, the policy's been kicked down the road for decades because it sounds good from that all of a sudden the school, I mean, the scope of a school, to me, is primarily academics. Now you're getting into the health area and even, perhaps even more sensitive area. And so the question becomes, where do you draw the line? And then what an academic school is supposed to do. And what kind of expertise do you have, and what kind of logistical support do you have, and what kind of prophylactics, and then what our liabilities are, and who's going to pay for it. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. So I appreciate that we look at the needs, but I think in that process, respectfully, I would hope you're also going to look at the implementation challenge. In relationship to what does it take away from our primary goal of student achievement?
So I think what Ms. Asabai is proposing is further discussion around these issues that will arise, and that this is needed, these kinds of discussions are needed in terms of implementation and revisiting this policy. Yes, Ms. Cox and then Mr. Williams.
I guess I'm kind of confused. Is this part going to be a part of the policy, or is this, if we vote on the policy, then is this like a direction from the committee to say, department, we need you to look into these things? Which is, I mean, we're all talking about, it seems like two different things.
So it is approving the policy, but it's giving direction to the department to further the conversation in light of the testimony, in light of discussions with the field on this particular policy. So it's giving, I think, direct guidance to
May I
the
step up the
department.
motion on the floor? Can I amend my motion?
First, I want to make sure
I got it.
Okay.
I'm just not quite sure why we don't vote on the policy first and then talk about recommendation. I mean,
We could
kind of lost on that.
do it separate, but this has been included.
I think I understand what you...
Okay, just want some clarity.
So my recommendation is that we implement the policy as described by the PIG with direction to the department to look at the testimony that was previously given from those two doctors, and also look at implementations to come up with any recommendations back to the board in due course in relationship to this policy. But it's the policy, but we're also giving further instructions to the department to look at think that's what's being asked here in this motion.
Exactly, you're right. So what you're saying covers what Member Alcibiade just wanted to articulate clearly on this piece of paper so everyone knew what they were voting on. Mr. Williams?
Just wanted to clarify, the motion on the floor is an amendment. It's an amendment by substitution that needs to be disposed of before you. If it passes, then it becomes the main motion. If it doesn't pass, then you go back to Mr. Horner's version.
So then so where we're standing right now is what Board Member Alcibiade has put forward here. And so I would like to call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion is passed. Mr. Williams, Mr. Horner.
I'm not voting, I'm not sure what we're voting on, but we're going to take the time. I'm so
Okay.
confused, I'm just slow.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
So now we have, this is the main motion. This is now the only motion on the floor. And it does two things. It approves 103.8, and then it gives direction to the department for follow-up as explained. So the only thing that'll go to the board this afternoon, I believe, would be just the policy. And the committee is asking the board, is asking the DOE, is giving direction to the DOE to do the follow-up.
So this doesn't go to the board?
This is a motion, Don. This is not a policy. So the first sentence says, recommend adoption of policy 103.8, prophylactics in public schools. So if we approve that, which is essentially the same as your original motion, so then that will go to the board, and then this policy that's in front of us, if approved by the board, that would be the policy. But in the meantime, the committee, the rest of it is giving the DOE direction about following up for further consideration at a later time.
So I think your question is whether this follow-up can follow the policy at the GBM meeting? Is that what you're asking?
I guess I'm questioning whether this committee can direct the department outside of the board to do something.
So-
So you would inform the board, at least, I would think.
Right. So when I do my report to the board, I can add this additional direction that we'd like the department to take on this.
Can we have discussion on that direction to the department now? Is that what we're doing?
No.
Discussion of this motion.
Right. And I'm just saying, I can support this motion if we add to it the implementation piece for the department to look at, which it doesn't address in this motion.
So this is about implementation. So are you recommending that the policy, are we able to recommend the policy and this additional amendment and direction to the GBM?
The way I read this motions on the floor is it has to do with the concerns regarding student health. It doesn't have concerns about the implementation.
So,
May I add in there? So the whole issue of prophylactics in our public schools will be looked at in the context of the implementation of the school health services policy that we passed.
If that's
Thus, the whole framework is with the department's implementation consideration.
your understanding of what the motion says, I'm okay with that.
okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. De Lima.
I think I got no problem with what's being suggested. I think the other layer, though, is when we took action on our sex education policy, it also spoke to the need for implementation plan, and that policy, abstinence is still a piece of that aspect of it, and I think it all has to be considered in total. And that's all I wanted to say. That policy should also be considered when the department does its review.
Exactly. And so it's all within this conversation around school health services and the new, and that sex ed comprehensive policy that you are just mentioning. Okay, thank you, board members. We have 3 more to go. Oh, we have to still vote on this. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, it passes. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so we have 2 abstains. Okay, E104, graduates ready for lifelong learners.
So this particular proposal from the PIG is a new policy, E102, and we found it to be redundant with E102, excuse me, this is E104, graduates ready for lifelong learning. In our analysis, we found it to be redundant with E102, which we just dealt with, that deals with academic mastery and assessment. Therefore, we are recommending to not, no action on the PIG's recommendation with regards to establishing this new policy E104. If the committee is in agreement, I don't think any motion is necessary. Because no action on this would mean that the proposal from the PIG would just not go forward.
Okay.
We can do nothing.
Yeah, we could do nothing. No objection. We'll file that and do what you just said. Okay, E105, broad-based curriculum.
E105 broad-based curriculum, again, we are looking here at recommendation from the PIG. We are proposing, instead in Exhibit E105, calling it Well-Rounded Academic Program. And it is echoes our belief statement and is representative of a strategy that is in the strategic plan under Objective 1A.
Move approval. This is Exhibit A now.
Exhibit A is a department proposed policy.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Okay, thank you. We're in discussion. Okay, let's call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Last one, supports for effective learning.
New policy, E106. This is, the department is recommending to substantially adopt the PIG recommendations. And therefore, we are looking at Exhibit A.
Move approval.
Okay, we're in discussion. Okay, let's call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, board members, Ms. Chun, do you have anything else to add?
I just was going to say this concludes our work on the policy audit. So at this point, after all of this time, we have taken action upon all of the recommendations from the PIG in one way or another, and the board staff has some administrative work to do in terms of organizing all of this, but the intention is that as of July 1, we will only have the new policies in terms of the new numbering system, and we'll dispense of the old 4-digit system of policies.
Right. I want to thank the department for their hard work with reviewing these policies and moving forward with this. It does present a structure now that we can all move forward to, that we all have agreed upon. And I just want to take this opportunity, this is the last Student Achievement Committee meeting that I'll be presiding over, and just wanted to thank my fellow board members for all of their hard work. It's been a pleasure working with them. I want to particularly thank my co-chair, vice chair, partner, Mr. Jim Williams, in this entire process. I could not have done it without him. Thank you so much, board members, for this lengthy meeting, but I think it was well worth it for today to move through all these important agenda items. Mahalo.
Sure. I think on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for your leadership and your equanimity and all you've contributed to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda is adjourned, meeting is adjourned at 1 o'clock. Enjoy lunch.